Hello, this is Omi Naruzi with Team SideScroller, and this is our progress report for Sprint 2. Let's start out with Drew Demechko.
For Sprint 2, I worked on user stories around movement functionality. The first story, as a ground enemy, I want to travel consistently either left or right across the ground so that I can try to attack the player. The acceptance criteria for this is when the ground enemy appears, it should travel consistently in a horizontal trajectory. So when you click start here, and then let the game load up, and we'll wait for a ground enemy here. As you can see, entering our right, the ground enemy comes after you in a horizontal fashion. The second user story I worked on was, as a ground enemy, I want to spawn off the screen so that I don't randomly appear on the screen. So to make it more realistic, they spawn and they come onto the screen from the different directions. The acceptance criteria: when the ground enemy spawns, it should approach from off screen and out of view of the player. So if we travel, we can see that the enemy won't spawn just randomly right next to you. It'll come like it's walking from the side of the screen like this one just did. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Tyrell Tachibana, and I'm going to be going over the user stories and the acceptance criteria for my second sprint. Now, for my user stories under game screen functionality, as a player, I would want to press the X button to melee attack so that I can attack enemies. And as a player, I want to appear to slash in front of me when I melee attack so that the game appears more realistic. And the acceptance criteria for both would be that when the game is open and the user clicks on the X button, the player performs a melee attack. And when the game is open and the user clicks on the X button, the user's character performs a sword swinging animation. Open over the Android emulator to prove these things. As you can see, there's a few enemies on the screen already, and I can press the X button to perform a melee attack, and it does a melee swinging animation. That should be the extent of my acceptance criteria. Thank you.
Hello, this is Micah McKinnon. The user stories I had for Sprint 2 are for flying enemies in our game. The first user story I have is, as a flying enemy, I want to travel consistently either left or right across the air and out of reach of the player so that I can try to attack the player from a safe distance. The second story is as follows. As a flying enemy, I want to spawn off the screen so that I don't randomly appear on the screen. The acceptance criteria for the first user story is, when the flying enemy appears, it should travel consistently in a horizontal trajectory outside the reach of the player. The acceptance criteria for my final user story is, when the flying enemy spawns, it should approach from off the screen and out of view of the player. Here we are on the game screen, and as you can see, one flying enemy has now spawned on the left side of the screen. As it spawned, it approached from off the screen and out of view of the player. The flying enemy is now traveling consistently in a horizontal trajectory outside the reach of the player. I'm now going to speed up the video until the first flying enemy has traveled off the screen. The first flying enemy has now traveled off the screen.
Hello, this is Omid again, and my user stories for this sprint were as follows. As a player, I want to press the screen above me so that I can perform a ranged attack, and as a player, I want to have a finite amount of projectiles for a period of time so that I cannot just constantly fire projectiles all over the screen. The acceptance criteria was as follows. When the game is open and the user clicks on the screen in any direction above them, a ranged attack is performed. And when the game is open and the user or a user fires a projectile, the amount of projectiles should decrease until he has none. After a short reloading period, the projectile amount should replenish. Here we are on the game screen, and as you can see, if I click on the screen, we fire projectiles, and here is the projectile count right over there. So when I run out, you are left with none for a little while, and then after a little bit of time, it reloads. Let's do that one more time. So there are all those projectiles, and it's reloading, and I can't fire one, and now I can, now that it is reloaded. Thank you very much.